Well, as family feuds go, the picture that Harry and Meghan have painted is like any other family feud, except it's not any other family. It's the royal family. We have now seen 6 hours of that docuseries. Everyone's talking about it, it seems. Even if you haven't subjected yourself to those 6 hours, joining me live is news.com royal reporter Bronte Coy. She joins me here at the desk, and you have endured the 6 hours of the documentary. Look, I'm sure you watched it with an open mind. What were your initial thoughts on the final 3 hours?
If the first 3 hours was our entree, last night was certainly our feast. Let's just put it that way. It seemed like the first half was the setup, and last night, in the last 3 episodes, they just didn't pull any punches. To be honest, no one really came off particularly well by the end of that 6 hours. Prince William particularly, Harry really went for him. The main takeaways and the most surprising things that we learned were details about that Sandringham Summit. Now, everyone spoke about this. All eyes were on Sandringham that weekend back in early 2020 when all the details of Megxit were being hammered out between the royal family. Prince Harry has now spoken specifically about what went on in that room, which we've never known before, and he described a terrifying scene, his words, as his brother screamed and shouted at him. He said that his father told lies in that room as well, and the Queen just watched on, which is really strong language when you're speaking directly about the senior royals.
Especially when it's such a private family. For decades, it's been never explain, never complain, and just move on. He has shattered that in these 3 hours overnight, taking viewers into one of the most intense conversations, I imagine, that has ever taken place between the royal family. But Max Foster said something to me a little earlier on today that rung so true. This is not a piece of journalism, and perhaps we shouldn't view it that way. This is a one-sided story from two individuals venting their spleen.
That's absolutely right. And if you think back on any sibling arguments, especially bearing in mind that in early 2020, Harry and Meghan had just dropped this bomb, so to speak.
That.
Well, William particularly, his life was about to change very dramatically as a direct result of Harry and Meghan leaving. And that's not to criticise Harry and Meghan for that decision, but William being potentially very emotional at that time is because he and his wife and their 3 kids were about to have their lives changed. They were about to have a lot less free time, a lot less private and family time. They were picking up the slack for what was going to be left behind in royal duties. So the idea that he may have been a bit upset isn't that surprising. And as you mentioned, yeah, it's not a piece of journalism. It is one-sided. And what would have balanced that out, and this is the other major thing that you could really take away from that 6 hours, there was no sense of reflection from Harry and Meghan. There was a lot of narration. There was a lot of here's what went wrong, and that's absolutely their prerogative. That's their side. At no point did they say, looking back, you know, emotions are running high, potentially would have done it differently this way. Yeah. Maybe there's a way back in the future now that this is all said and done. There was none of that whatsoever.
They are presenting it as black and white, and any family argument, particularly this one, it's never black and white. I think, you know, there was room for introspection, and this is not what this docuseries delivered. But it's whatever side of the fence you sit on. I feel like most people are on the very critical side of Harry and Meghan, but perhaps there's something in that there's such a reaction. You know, are they challenging parts of the press? And are we, you know, so kind of offended by that, wanting to defend our own entity, that maybe we need to have a bit of introspection as well? And not we as in the press worldwide, but British tabloid press is pretty hardcore.
But yeah, the examples that they used during the documentary that they pulled up as well, and particularly with the examples between Kate and Meghan, for example, the eating of avocados and things like that, and the way that was presented differently.
What was that?
Kate was praised for eating avocados. Meghan, the headline was something about how it's linked to poverty or war. It was this, they just had this basically this rundown of examples
But also you can do, when you're in the press that much, you can always find examples where angles are less than complimentary. I don't think it was blanket terrible press at the time, was it?
Well, we can only speak to our own experience. No, it absolutely is the case. And I've actually thought back on this myself. I've been on doing royal reporting for years, since back to literally the first day that Harry and Meghan started dating and that news broke. And I can only speak to my own experience, but I know that at that time, we were so excited about it. It was, the praise for Meghan was gushing through in every headline. It was all very exciting because we saw it for the opportunity that it was. It was this modernising of the monarchy. She was such a breath of fresh air. She's so intelligent. And looking back on that, it's really jarring to see how it all turned. But if you pinpoint those moments, it really did start to turn around 6 months after their wedding, when the reports of bullying against Meghan first came out. Whether true or untrue, those reports started to come through from palace sources. Now, none of that was addressed in the documentary, which again is part of the issue. They've put out their side of it all, which is their prerogative, but in 6 hours they weren't able to do any sort of self-reflection on. These reports came out in late 2018 that I had spoken very badly to my staff. I'd left women in tears. These were the sorts of stories that were being told. There was no addressing of her side of that at all, or even a defence, or it was more just brushed over, and I think that's where the frustration comes in with them.
That's where the introspection comes. Or maybe, maybe I accept this staff member, I didn't mean to offend her, like whatever.
Exactly.
And there was none of that. So we're not going to hear from the palace. We've had that very clear. Tessa Dunlop, Russell Myers, Max Foster have all said, no, don't expect any kind of response. The response has been a united front from King Charles and Prince William.
That's exactly right. They've got a lot of really feel-good Christmas stuff coming up. And I think that they're basically their next focus is let's just put out all those really lovely photos of us doing Christmas together. Also, with this docuseries, with the Oprah interview last year, don't forget there's a book coming out from Harry next month. It'll be death by 1,000 cuts if they continue to put out statements or if they have to keep responding to all of these claims. It just becomes that real war of words, and all the focus will be on that for the royals.
So it is keep calm and carry on.
That's
from
exactly
here.
right. It's working.
Bronte Coy, thanks so much. Appreciate it.